Hello everyone and welcome to another Minecraft 1.21 video about the crafter and something amazing we can do with this new block. The idea is to have a single tree farm providing a source of wood that is then auto-crafted into all of these different items. So this would be an automated system where all of these different item types are crafted and used to fill up your storage system. So if there's a material that you need to build with, well, it's already crafted for you to take. And one of the best things about this concept is that it would work the same for each different wood type. So one contraption to make all the variants of these different types of wood. So for each different tree farm that you build, you could have a whole array of different materials pre-crafted and ready for you to grab and build with. There is of course one exception, and that is bamboo. And this just happens to be the one that I've been working on. Now before we get into it, you may just be wondering what this new crafter block for 1.21 is. It can automatically craft, of course that's hinted at in the name, but if you want a full showcase of this block and how it works, it's this video here you'll want to check out. It will be linked in the description box down below. And just before we get into things, a lot of you watching are not subscribed. Please do hit that subscribe button if you want to catch more videos like this in the future. Now let's crack on with the video. And now's a good time to mention that this is a showcase, not a tutorial. I don't consider this finished as of yet, as I have hit the limits of my abilities. So I'm making this video to showcase my work and what's possible, and leave it for the redstone community to see where they can take this idea. And before we check out the components of this crazy contraption, I should talk about some of the parameters that I set for myself. For example, I wanted this to be 1 wide, so that the user interface when collecting items from these chests could be as short of a walk as possible, which is why this contraption here is laid out in slices. I also wanted it to use a minimal amount of resources, meaning that when we look inside of these hoppers, you can see that there's no items in them. A minimal amount of bamboo inside of this crafter, nothing in this one. It doesn't hold a lot of resources inside of it. And possibly most important of all, the contraption isn't going to break if the consistent flow of items slows down. So this is my command block farm simulator that'll make sure that there's always bamboo flowing into these hoppers. So if you had a weak farm with an inconsistent input, or maybe just a small amount of bamboo flowing in, this contraption shouldn't break. And because of those parameters, I may have made this harder than it needed to be, but this is the end result with most of the bamboo items crafted automatically. Now the first slice is the easiest to understand, as it's simply just bamboo, one of 17 items we're going to collect from this contraption. And what you'll notice is that it all lead to these hoppers at the front here. This is really important because these hoppers would be the equivalent of these ones here, allowing the items to flow down, fill up all of the chests in front of them, and then back up to this hopper. So each and every one of these slices has a couple of items inside of this hopper. As soon as it reaches the threshold, that's when it stops auto-crafting anymore. And just to demonstrate that in action, I'm going to pull these blocks out of here, throw them onto the ground, and then the contraption is going to go to work. You can see the repeater and the comparator at the top have turned off. There's some occasional blinking and activating of observers here, and that is creating the items and bringing them back to the front. So when this reaches its limit, the redstone signal at the back here will update, and that will then lock the hopper at the top, and it is no longer auto-crafting. So we are now going to go through the slices of this contraption one by one. Because there are many repeating elements, it'll take me a while to explain the first slice, but then we'll be talking about the variants and how we achieved all of the different crafting recipes. So we have a feed of items across the top, then we have this hopper that can be locked. When it's unlocked, those items make their way down into the crafter. And for all of these, the recipe is first to create the block of bamboo, but in this one, all we need to do is move it into our storage. We have a dropper here because we want to shift it forward so that the alignment of these comparators at the bottom can make this tileable with the other slices. That is because at the back here, we need to detect signal strength change. And that means when this one changes to a 2, it's not going to affect the redstone over to the side of it. So this slightly extended layout allows for the contraption to remain tileable. There's also this observer here which we have to avoid because it could power the redstone signal below. So next up, this composter is here to create a signal strength of 8. We get a signal strength of 9 when this has filled up. So we can detect that change and then move the signal through the observer to the dropper. This will power the crafter above it to do the crafting, and it'll actually get powered twice to move the item from the dropper into the pot and then into the item hopper. Let's now look at the locking system in action. So when we take this out of here, we change the redstone signal down the bottom. This means that our new copper bulb up the top here isn't activated, so we're no longer locking the hopper at the front. Okay, so we'll simulate a bunch more crafting taking place, and this changes the redstone signal here, which sends a signal upwards. So then we've turned on the bulb and we've locked the hopper at the front. So from here, what we have to do is figure out how to get this working with more crafters to make all of the different recipes possible with bamboo. The next slice is really easy to understand because only one block has changed. It's this crafter here. So instead of putting our block of bamboo into a dropper, we're putting it into a crafter, which then turns it into those bamboo planks. The next slice is the button, the most important slice in all of these, and I'll explain why in just a second. But first, let's look at what's changed. We now have an extra couple of observers going into another crafter. So when we successfully create that block of bamboo, it gets turned into planks, but this crafter is pointing down into the next one, which turns it into a button. The reason this is the most important slice is because it was designed by CubeHamster and got me going on this whole project. You see, my original design for this project including pistons, which made it a noisy contraption, and the last slice that I had added over here was the one that crafted buttons. And that's when CubeHamster showed me this incredibly elegant alternative design that incorporated the copper bulb locking system and was far more efficient with resources. So once again, big shout out to CubeHamster, and let's see where this project went after I got a helping hand with the redstone. So the next slice looks very similar to the last one. We've removed a couple of observer blocks as they're not necessary. What we're creating here in this crafter is just the pressure plate, and those get stockpiled at the front. And it's the same layout again for this one, except we're crafting stairs. Very important though, you have to make the recipe face this way around, otherwise you'll get two in at a time and craft a pressure plate. So with this next layout, we create our planks at the front here, and then it goes into a hopper which points into another crafter. Now here you'll see that we got the composter again, and that's because we're waiting for this thing to fill up. Otherwise, it will erroneously craft the wrong type of item. So when it does fill up, it powers the barrel below, which can be powered. So that powers the crafter, and then it allows us to have the items sucked out by the hopper at the bottom. And this is important because then we can pick up the signal strength below these blocks. So that was trapdoors, and this one is doors. So the difference here is that we just changed the layout of the recipe. Next up, we need to craft slabs, and you'll notice that the crafter here faces forward into a dropper, which pushes the items into this hopper. That's because we need to create a little extra room to add this repeater here. You see, the observers are a little too quick, and we need a little extra delay. Next, we need to create the mosaic block, and this will be the foundation for the mosaic slab and stairs. And as you can see, things are starting to get a little convoluted, and that's because we now need to create the slabs that we were making and then turn them into mosaic blocks. So when we're ready to craft a slab, we then create two signals that go around to this block and then down here into the barrel, and this enables this thing to be crafted enough time to make all of the mosaic blocks without these slabs backing up and accumulating inside of the crafter. And it would appear that it always holds exactly two of each, so a very minimal amount of items kept inside of the system. And this is the point where I think you can say it's starting to look a little over-engineered, and that's because we're trying to fit everything into that one wide slice. So we've got a familiar set of events up to here where we created our mosaic block. Then instead of moving them into storage, we move them down to this crafter, and first of all, we're creating slabs. So we have the observers here to power the barrel, and the slabs end up in this hopper. And the chain to move the signal strength over to the back here is a little more convoluted, as you can see. This is because the width of the contraption is aligned at the back, so when it gets wider it pushes out to the front, and as it gets more complex it tends to go deeper too, which means that this hopper right here will be aligned to those chests that are going to be in our array, but then the ones further back are further away. So you'll end up with janky lines of hoppers and decorated pots to get all of the items to the correct place. This whole idea has its cons as well as the pros that I laid out earlier in the video, but now what I want to do is put all these slices together side by side. There is one potential issue with doing this that I overlooked in the beginning. This crafter, when powered, would also power the ones adjacent either side of it, which could be an issue. But for now, let's put the contraption together and find out what happens. Well, it seems to be solid. It made me a little anxious seeing some of these crafters fire up the ones adjacent to them, but after running this contraption for some time, as you can see, it's all locked up, and down the bottom here, we have a full stockpile of all of these ingredients. However, it gets pretty inefficient when you've got to run all of these items through tons of hoppers and decorated pots as well. And this is where I think doing things in a single slice kind of holds it back, because you need a far more curated approach so that you can get all of the final crafters much closer to the inventory space. And a lot of this gets reused as well, like all of these craft the same block. Maybe a better way to do this is to have a little module that once the bamboo is used, converts it into a block of bamboo and sends those across instead of it continuously being bamboo. And for those of you that are observant, you would have noticed that there are some missing recipes here. One of these is the raft, which is a rather simple crafting recipe that I just didn't bother to add to the contraption. The other ones, however, are a bit more complicated. A raft with a boat requires crafting a chest as well, and it's the same issue with the sign, bamboo fence gate, and fence because they need sticks. And this means we would go from crafting one thing at a time into mixing multiple materials, which I found really difficult to achieve with this type of layout. So in conclusion, I think this was a great experiment and a really good proof of concept. That if we want to maximize its efficiency and use of space, we're going to need a highly curated contraption. But that was just bamboo. There are of course other wood types we can take advantage of, however, my success so far have been rather limited. I did, however, identify another crafting recipe that the non-nether wood types have, and that is actually campfires. So by smelting wood with charcoal and then recycling that back into the system, you can make your sticks and feed them into the system along with the oak logs and create campfires on demand. And this contraption here technically worked, but it had some flaws and I didn't feel like it was a finished concept as of yet. But now, Redstone community, it is in your hands, and I'm sure with your help we can make some amazing contraptions here to auto-craft all of these items on demand. And of course, there's a heck of a lot of them that can be applied to each different wood type from a different wood farm. I think it could just be one of the most valuable creations in survival you could have with the crafter. But anyway, leave your thoughts down below, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and if you want to share some of your contraptions related to this one, the best way to get to me is always on Twitter. I do check my mentions, so you can follow me over there. Okay, that's it from me this one. Really do hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you soon with another. Bye bye.